This is a public forum to present the results of the work that the Planning Commission has been doing over the last 5 or 6 months. We've called it Phase 2 of the zoning update. I'm Mike Munson, and I've had the opportunity to work with the Commission. I hope I have the right buttons to push. Where is it? There it is.
You can just do page step or...
Well, I did that, but I pushed another button first and I did something. There we go. Phase 1, which was completed and actually the Select Board just adopted, where we looked at the individual zoning districts, we looked at the plan development provisions, and we looked at a whole bunch of things that were required under the statute, and those were put together, and that was adopted last month. In Phase 2, we've concentrated on some specific revisions, specific provisions, mostly in Article 19, but some in Article 15, one in Article 15. And those provisions are site plan review, conditional use review, nonconformities, performance standards, parking requirements, outdoor lighting, and demolition of structures. So what I thought I'd do is go briefly through each of these sets of revisions. In the site plan review, there were really 2 sets of things that we focused on. One was procedural changes, talking about how the process works, and the second was changes to the standards and the development requirements, what the applicant should be expected to provide as we go through the process. First of all, and this is one I think is really an important step, is that in the new revisions we're urging applicants to have a pre-submission staff meeting before they even start putting together an application for site plan approval. And I found in my work in other towns, as well as talking with Dean and John and other planning staff, that if we can get together with an applicant early on, before they've invested a lot of time and money in a project, and identify all the different things that might apply to this application. And it might be information that the town has gathered, like overlay districts and floodplain boundaries and those kinds of things, as well as the technical requirements of the zoning regulations. We can get those up front, and it's a lot easier for the applicant to deal with them, and the applicant is a lot more comfortable dealing with them then than after he's got a fully engineered set of plans and turns out that he has to make some revisions. So just simply requiring or urging that allows particularly the complicated applications to get in there early and get some discussion. Secondly, these revisions have revised the application submission requirements, so there's a better, more complete match between the standards that we're going to be reviewing projects by and the information that's provided. There's nothing more frustrating than getting halfway through a review or a deliberation and discovering that there's something missing, and suddenly you've got to continue the hearing, make the applicant get some more information or staff collect more information, reconvene, and it just delays everybody and it takes a lot of time. So this is intended as a mechanism to speed up the process and make it operate more smoothly. We have a lot of provisions for administrative review of minor site plan revisions. And we specified what they are. They're little things that don't change the location of buildings, don't change the major circulation pattern, don't change curb cuts, but might talk about replacing a deck with a patio or relocating a utility connection or something like that. The administrator can approve that himself. He has the ability, if he's not comfortable with it, if he thinks it's more complicated, to make a decision that it has to go to the DRB. And if the applicant doesn't like it, they can appeal it to the DRB, which kind of gets it to the DRB anyway. I've never heard of that happening, by the way. There's also a provision that when the administrator makes an administrative review, he has to report it to the DRB so that they're aware of what's going on. We required that as-built drawings be submitted in general at the time that a certificate of occupancy is requested. We're just trying to make sure that the town has a good record of what's actually built. And that's really true for the public utility connections, where the town may have to work with that at some point. So this is just completing the record. We've also specified the ability of the DRB to attach conditions to an approval. There's always been that provision in the language, but what we've tried to do here is make it clear that they have the ability to attach conditions related to all of the review criteria. So They can't, because somebody can't come back and say, well, you had the ability to put conditions, but not on this particular aspect. And we've tried to cover that so that you can address all of the requirements. And finally, on this section, we spelled out the provisions for denial, for continuation of a hearing, for approval or approval with conditions. And the decisions has to be rendered in 45 days, and that's a statutory requirement. So we're, again, pulling all of this consistent with the state requirements as well. In the standards of review, we've expanded the list of things that we can address a little bit to include surrounding roads, the impact on surrounding roads, outdoor lighting, since we just adopted a new outdoor lighting section, we wanted to make sure that that was addressed. Stormwater management, and the town is required to be addressing stormwater management as part of the Clean Water Act requirements. Other things that have been in the standards for a long time were revised and in some cases expanded a little bit. Stormwater management requires that the amount of runoff leaving the site be minimized and that the designs be consistent with both the town specs and the state standards. And we go on to say that for any project that has 1,000 square feet of exposed or disturbed area, that the erosion and sediment control has to meet the standards, the specifications of the state's rules. So we're making sure that we're getting a handle on not just the big projects, but the little ones as well when it comes to erosion and sediment control. We've spent a lot of time working on the revisions to the landscaping requirement. One of the first things we did is establish a sliding scale for determining the cost of landscaping that's required. The existing language simply says 3% of development costs. And quite honestly, on really large projects, sometimes it gets hard to figure out how to spend the money. So what we've included here is 3% on the first $250,000, 2% on the second $250,000, and 1% on anything over $500,000. We've included some requirements that landscaping plans be prepared by a qualified professional, and that could include a landscaper, a landscape designer, a landscape architect. There's a list in there. We've required specifically that landscaping be designed to screen dumpsters and ground-mounted utility equipment like these big transformer and switch boxes and so on. In the mixed-use district, we've modified it to provide and to require some more effective screening between residential and non-residential uses. And we've required the outdoor lighting to meet the lighting standards that we'll talk about a little bit later. Actually, we won't talk about them because we didn't change them to speak of. We also have included some